Hi, my name is Eli Khan, Principal Product Manager for AWS Security Hub. This is an introduction to AWS Security Hub. First, a quick introduction of myself. I have been a Principal Product Manager for AWS Security Hub for the last several months. Before AWS, I was co-founder of a company called Squirrel, a threat analytics company that AWS acquired in January 2018. And before that, I spent some time in government. First as Director for Cybersecurity at the White House, and before that, Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Homeland Security at the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. So today, we're going to give you an overview of AWS Security Hub. We're going to talk about some of our customers and partners. We're going to deep dive into the key features of Security Hub. We'll show you a demo and then talk to you about how you can get started. So first, an overview. Before I dive deep into Security Hub, I wanted to start with an overview of AWS's security strategy overall. This strategy is predicated on the NIST cybersecurity framework. These 5 functions of identify, protect, detect, and respond are from the cybersecurity framework. And as you can see here, AWS has aligned various services to each of those functions. Identify is all about identifying your key assets and resources. And we have systems like System Manager and AWS Config to help you understand what your resources are and how they are deployed within your AWS environment. You can't start protecting your assets until you've properly identified them. But once you've done that, you can put in protective strategies. And this is all about building a hard outer shell around your data, your applications, your users, and your networks. We have services like Shield, which is an anti-DDoS service, and WAF, a web application firewall, that can help you protect your assets. Next, detect. So this is all about detecting anomalies, unusual behaviors, and compliance issues inside your AWS environment. We have things like Guard Duty, which was launched at reInvent last year, a threat detection service that's become one of the fastest growing AWS services ever. And just a few weeks ago, we launched AWS Security Hub at reInvent. And Security Hub, as I'll be telling you here in just a bit, helps you detect compliance drift, also helps you detect what your most important alerts are across all of your services. Next, this is an area where we've actually added to the NIST cybersecurity framework. We have 2 different paths through which you can get to from detect to respond. Most customers want to try to automate response as much as possible. And we have things like AWS Lambda and step functions to help with that. Some alerts or findings do require some human investigation. And today we have services like CloudWatch and CloudTrail that help you sift through the underlying activity to understand if those things you have detected are indeed true positives. Lastly, oftentimes when there is a major incident, you need to put in place recovery activities. And AWS makes this very easy with things like EBS snapshots, golden images, and Glacier archives. You can quickly rebuild a network that's been compromised. Okay, with that, why did we build AWS Security Hub? It's really these 4 major issues are the main drivers as to why we built AWS Security Hub. First, from a compliance perspective, many of our customers have various both internal and external compliance requirements. Some of these are regulatory, things like NIST and HIPAA and PCI. Some of them are internally driven, and some of them are just industry best practices. So AWS customers need ways to keep track of these various compliance requirements and make sure that you are adhering to them. Next, our AWS customers are oftentimes dealing with different types of security tools, sometimes dozens of different security tools. And each of those security tools is emitting alerts in different formats. As a result, customers have to parse and normalize this data into a common format so that they can start searching and analyzing those alerts and ultimately figuring out which alerts are most important, which brings us to the third problem statement. Customers are dealing with sometimes dozens, hundreds, even thousands of alerts each day, and they need help identifying and prioritizing which alerts are most important, which ones need human attention in terms of response actions. Lastly, in terms of visibility, customers want a single pane of glass. They want a single place where they can go to understand their security and compliance state. They don't want to have to pivot around to different screens or windows to understand their security and compliance state. They want a single place they can go to each morning that tells them what they need to do that day to improve their security and compliance posture. Okay, so for that reason, we built out AWS Security Hub. So the way that AWS Security Hub works is that you turn it on, and it can be turned on with just a few clicks, and it automatically starts aggregating security findings or alerts from our core AWS services, security services. Those are security services such as Guard Duty, Inspector, and Macie. You don't have to do anything. If you have those services on in the account where you enabled Security Hub, we will automatically bring those findings into Security Hub. And then another really exciting thing is that we've integrated with 29 different partner solutions. And same as Guard Duty, Inspector, Macie, those partner solutions will also push findings to Security Hub in an automated way. Now, what's really special about this process here is that each of these different security solutions, both the AWS ones and the partner ones, are pushing those findings to Security Hub in a standardized format. We call that the AWS Security Finding Format. This means as an analyst, I don't have to do any parsing and normalization of the data. It all comes to us, it all comes to me in that standardized format. And so I can start my analysis day one. We're also giving analysts the ability to better understand what are the most important findings and which are the resources inside their environment that are most at risk, that are most problematic. We call that capability insights. And insights are lightweight correlation or stacking rules that help you quickly identify those resources that are most important or most that need to be addressed most quickly. So that's one big bucket of capability. The other second big bucket of capability is automated compliance checks. So on one hand, we're helping you understand what security findings or alerts are most important. On the other hand, we're also proactively going out and doing automated compliance checks. The first compliance module that we rolled out last week at reInvent is the CIS AWS Foundations benchmark, and we have a number of others coming down the line. Lastly, we're not just a visualization dashboard. We're also letting you close that loop and take action on those prioritized security findings and compliance checks that came back as negative. We use an integration with CloudWatch events to allow customers to create custom actions, such as sending to a SIM, sending to a ticketing system, to a chat system, or even to a full remediation platform to address those findings that have been deemed most important and highest priority. So, AWS Security Hub is available today as a public preview service. We rolled this out on Wednesday of reInvent in the Andy Jassy's keynote speech. So and what this means is that anyone can go into their management console in AWS and get started right away with AWS Security Hub. During this public preview period, Security Hub, there are no additional costs for using Security Hub. If you are an existing config customer. If you're not a config customer yet in that specific account where you've enabled Security Hub, you do need to enable config first because our compliance checks do have a dependency on config. Once that's all set up, it's just a few clicks to get started. And we plan to iterate with customers over the next several months before we launch as GA. We want to get additional customer feedback on these features that we've recently put together. And over the next several months, we'll be working with you and taking your feedback in, further refining the product before we officially call it generally available. That being said, we do have full API, CLI, and SDK support with a number of languages in terms of the SDK support. And we will not be making any backwards breaking changes to the API. So you can go ahead, build out integrations, build out workflows using our API or SDKs, and those will still be viable when we move to GA. We rolled out at a global scale at reInvent, so we are available in 15 regions around the world. We're not yet a multi-regional service, and so what that means is that you do need a separate instance of Security Hub for each region. We do support multi-account roll-up within a region. I'll get into that in just a bit. All right, but first I want to talk a bit about our customers and partners. So leading up to the reInvent announcement, we did a private beta with about 20 different customers. Some of those customers are listed here. You can see there's a wide variety of customers, financial institutions, security companies, more B2C companies, etc. But we work closely with these different customers to evaluate the initial beta software of Security Hub and get it to the state where it is now. Now, customers are using us, and these customers in particular are using us for a variety of different reasons. I would say that the feature that most excited these customers were the automated compliance checks, but they are also pushing their findings into Security Hub to get that dual understanding of both their security and compliance state. Most of these customers have a dedicated team that is looking at AWS security issues, and Security Hub gives that team this AWS-specific view of their security and compliance state. Some of these customers are also using a SIM, a security information event management tool. They might be using that SIM for their both their on-prem and their AWS environments. So they might be pushing actually data and findings from Security Hub into their SIM and then using that SIM for both that on-prem and AWS view. One of the most exciting parts of the launch that we did at reInvent was our partner integration story. So as I was mentioning, we integrated with 29 different products across 24 different companies. A number of these companies actually did multiple integrations. Splunk did both with Splunk Enterprise and Phantom. Qualys did with both their compliance and their vulnerability module. Checkpoint did with their firewalls and Dome 9. And Palo Alto did with RedLock and also their firewall module. So we have a wide, diverse group of partners here. And all of these partners went through very rigorous testing. So these are not just paper integrations. AWS validated each of these integrations and confirmed that they were working as desired. You'll also see in here that Cloud Custodian is actually an open source tool. I'll get into Cloud Custodian in just a bit, but Cloud Custodian open source tool sponsored by Capital One. That also was able to help us demonstrate that you could integrate with open source tools or homegrown tools in addition to commercially supported tools. Over time, we're going to continue to add additional partners. We actually already have a next wave of partners lined up, and we'll likely get those into the software and the service before we go GA. I'd encourage you, if there are additional partners that aren't on here that you'd like to be on here, work with your account manager and we'll make sure we get those integrations built working with those partners. So I want to highlight just a handful of partner integrations to, one, give you a sense of what these integrations look like, and two, give you a sense of how easy it is to get started with these integrations. So CrowdStrike is an endpoint protection platform company. And the way it works is that it uses a CloudFormation template to deploy a Python app into your AWS environment. That Python app collects alerts or findings from the EC2 instances where the CrowdStrike agent that from their Falcon platform is deployed. That Python app collects those findings from those various EC2 instances and actually does a enrichment call to the AWS API. So it further enriches those findings with additional resource information from that AWS API call, and then it sends those enriched findings to Security Hub. Using that CloudFormation template, it usually takes a customer 10 to 15 minutes to get up and running with this integration. Next, Alert Logic. Alert Logic is a managed security service provider. And the thing I really like about Alert Logic's integration is that it does a great job of reducing the noise for an AWS customer. So the way that Alert Logic's integration works is that it is taking in findings from the customer environment. It's being pushed to an Alert Logic AWS account where it undergoes further processing and analysis. And then Alert Logic only pushes the confirmed incidents to the AWS Security Hub. So that the view that the customer has is a very reduced view with all the noise cut out so that they're only seeing the most actionable items that they need to deal with each day. Next, Armor. Armor is another MSSP. And the thing I like about the Armor integration is how easy they make it to turn on. It's literally a couple of clicks to turn on the AWS Security Hub integration. You simply need to flip this toggle, and that will put in place the cross-account roles that's needed to push findings to Security Hub. And then you can actually go the next step, and you can select specifically which types of findings you want to push to Security Hub. Right now, there's two options. You can either push your vulnerability scanning findings or your malware findings, or all of them if you so decide. Lastly, Cloud Custodian. Like I said, Cloud Custodian is an open source tool, and we have lots of customers that love open source, that are using open source and building homegrown solutions using open source. Using AWS Security Hub, you can integrate your own open source or homegrown tools to send findings and push them to Security Hub. We've made that really easy with Cloud Custodian. Our field team working with Capital One has built out a full-blown integration with Cloud Custodian and have actually committed that into the Cloud Custodian open source code. So we do all the hard work of mapping the Cloud Custodian findings into the AWS security finding format, and it just works. But this is also just a great example of how you can take your own open source tool that you're using and push those findings into Security Hub. And as you can see here, there's a whole blog that we put out recently about how this integration works. So let's next talk about some of the core features of Security Hub. The first feature is a simple one. Well, at least simple to you. Under the covers, there's some complexity here that we've abstracted away. And it's very, very easy to get started with Security Hub. You simply need to go to the service homepage and click Enable Security Hub. From there, you'll be taken to this permissions page, which just simply explains the permissions that you are putting in place when you enable Security Hub, and you can drill down into those from within the console. Once you click Enable Security Hub, then all that magic starts happening. We start automatically integrating and pulling in findings from GuardDuty Inspector and Macie. We start automatically conducting our compliance checks. And then with a few additional clicks, you can add in partner data flows and bring those in. Once you have Security Hub set up for one account, it's quite easy to also then just add additional accounts to give you a multi-account roll-up. And the way that this works is that you can invite member accounts under your master account. When you do this, an invite is sent to those member accounts. When they accept, you will then be able to see all of the security and compliance findings for each member account from within your master account view. The member accounts can only see their findings, but the master account can see all of the member account findings underneath them. Once again, this can be done with just a few clicks. You can manually enter in the accounts, or you can just upload a CSV spreadsheet of the account information. All right, next, AWS security finding format. I mentioned this a few times, and this is another mechanism we have under the covers to make life easier for you, the analyst. This finding format is something that we developed over the last year or so with various partners in all of our native AWS security services. It consists of roughly 100 or so JSON formatted fields. A lot of the fields are optional. And two of the really important things, across those fields are, one, we've built out a finding type taxonomy. The finding type taxonomy is how we are categorizing and how our partners are categorizing their findings. The first level of the taxonomy are these 5 different namespaces. Under these namespaces, you have categories and then classifiers. And so partners have categorized all of their findings against these finding types, as have we. This gives you, the analysts, a really easy way of organizing your insights, your correlation rules. So if you want to see all of the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures associated with different partner AWS security solutions, we've already done that organization by working with partners to properly classify their findings. Another hard problem that we're trying to address is how to normalize severity scores across different findings. So we've been working across our AWS services and with our partners to come up with a normalized severity scoring system. Now, this is pretty high level, and there's still lots of latitude for how partners actually do their scoring, but we've given partners some high level but important guidance about how to think about severity scoring. So every finding that comes to us with both the original severity score that provider or partner created, and then also a normalized severity score that's aligned to this 0 to 100 scale. Generally speaking, you can think about this through the lens of the cyber kill chain or cyber attack model. Things further to the left of a kill chain are going to have lower severity scores. Things further to the right will have higher severity scores. Things like sensitive data identifications or vulnerability scans will be on the lower end, the left-hand end, because those reflect findings that are associated with things that have not yet happened yet. They are things that could pose a problem in the future if exploited by an adversary, but they're things that haven't happened yet. Whereas things on the right-hand side, like data exfiltration, data exposure, data destruction, those are things that have happened and that represent much higher severity. Once again, this is another way of us trying to make life easier for the analysts, to give you a way to look at all of your findings and to try to understand which are the ones that are most important. Next, compliance checks. So as I was mentioned earlier, compliance checks are very exciting for the customers that we've been working with. The first compliance module that we've rolled out is the Center for Internet Security's AWS Foundations Benchmark. And it consists of 43 fully automated, nearly continuous checks. There actually are 49 rules in the benchmark. 6 of them, though, are not automatable. So we focused initially on the 43 that could be automated. And what we do is we take those 43 checks and then we roll them up into dashboard widgets like the one you see here. And what this is telling you is, of those 43 rules, which ones are compliant and which ones are non-compliant. A non-compliant rule means that in any of the accounts that are part of the master member hierarchy, if there is a single failed or single warning check, then the whole rule is non-compliant. Failed means that, simply that there was evidence that that particular rule wasn't satisfied based on our config checks. Warning means that there's something isn't configured properly. So that might be you haven't properly set up AWS config yet, which is a dependency for a number of our compliance checks. Next, insights. So insights is another really exciting feature. So the goal of insights is to help you identify which resources are highest priority, which ones have the biggest security and compliance issues that you need to focus your time and attention on. What insights are really simple correlation or stacking rules. Every insight is comprised of filtered chips, as we call them. And this insight here is a very simple one. It's simply looking at which AMIs are generating the most findings. And you can see here we have some filter chips in here that are just simply grouping all the findings by AMI image ID. And this quickly tells you which AMIs you need to focus on. We then also take these and we bubble some of them up into dashboard widgets. So you can visually see these things and ultimately each day see which resources you need to focus in on. You can also create your own insights. So we pre-package the system with a number of insights, but you can also create your own or take the ones that we have initially packaged and build on them, add additional filters to make them even more relevant to your AWS environment. All right, next. So we are not just a visualization tool. We help you complete that cybersecurity loop, and we help you take response and remediation actions on the resources and the findings that you have deemed to be most important. And we do this all via CloudWatch events. I'll show you this in the demo, but the way that it works is that we have these ideas of custom actions, and you can create custom actions. You can create custom actions around sending things to Slack, to a ticketing system, to an incident management system, or to a remediation platform. AWS Arrow is our AWS professional services remediation platform. It contains 25 different remediation playbooks, things like isolating instances, isolating users, archiving findings, etc. But you can create custom actions around any of these things. We actually have already created code for some of them. So we've built out the full integration with AWS Arrow. If you want that, it is available. We've built out integrations with Slack and PagerDuty. Those are available in our AWS samples GitHub site. So the way that this works, though, from a process flow perspective is once you've identified a finding that is of interest that you want to take an action on, you select it, and then you send it as an action out of Security Hub. And when you take that action on it, it is emitted as a CloudWatch event. And then inside the CloudWatch event console, you have rules. And those rules are looking for the custom action ID that is added to that event. And when there is a match, that rule is triggered, and those findings are sent to a target as defined in the rule. That target is usually a Lambda function or a step function, and that does some additional processing on the data and ultimately sends it to its final destination, which might be something like a Slack webhook, or it could be that full-blown remediation package that Arrow provides. So this gives customers a lot of flexibility to define the actions that they want that are appropriate. And like I said, we've built out integration code for a number of the core ones. All right, let's jump to a demo. Okay, so the first thing that you'll see when you search for Security Hub in the Management Console is this service homepage. This contains some basic information about the service. It contains some pricing information. As you can see, Security Hub, there are no costs during this public preview period, except for config costs if you're not using config. We're not charging for any config rules that we run under the covers, but you do need to have config items and config recorder in place. So if you don't have config items, config recorder yet, you do need to enable that. There is a cost through config for that. If you're already using config in that account and you already have config items and config recorder, then you wouldn't see any additional costs. When you first activate the service, this will actually say Enable Security Hub. It'll take you to those service level permissions that I showed you in the slides. Since I've already activated Security Hub in this account, it will just say Go to Security Hub. And when I click on that, it'll take me to my summary dashboard page. So the first thing that a customer will see when they log into Security Hub after they get through the service homepage is the summary dashboard. And the summary dashboard is designed to give you, the security analyst or security engineer or compliance professional, the key information that you need to know each day to do your job. I'll quickly run through some of the core dashboards here, the dashboard widgets as we call them, just to give you a sense of what's here on the summary page. First, we have just some summary information about what your top insights are. These top insights, they're hard-coded into the system, but they're designed to really show you which ones are likely most important to your environment. Next, we have the provider status widget. The provider status widget is designed to tell you, is there something wrong with my core finding providers because they haven't submitted a finding in a while? Right now, we have this built out for GuardDuty, Inspector, and Macy, and over time, we'll be adding our various partner providers into this widget as well. Next, in terms of standards, so we have two different looks at standards. The first is that same widget I showed you earlier in the slides, showing you for those 43 rules, which ones are compliant and which ones are non-compliant. And the thing I like about this widget is actually it also shows you how close to compliance are you. Is it just a single finding or account that is preventing you from being compliant, or are you do you have failed findings across all of your accounts? This next widget, top resources by failed active CIS checks, it's really telling you which resources have the most compliance failures so that you can drill down into them. Next, some additional insights. So these are the graphical view of those insights. These first two are really giving you a sense of how quickly are you archiving findings. So this is showing you which findings were created on which date and are still active. So, ultimately you want to see older findings out of the active state and into the archive state. So ultimately, as you get towards the end here, you won't see any findings because they've been all archived and no longer active. You can see here that this one is looking at findings based on providers. And you can see here we have both AWS and partner providers in this view. And this is the same view, but instead of looking at the provider view, is really looking in terms of criticality, in terms of severity labels. So once again, if you have lots of critical findings that are old, that have been created a while ago, that are still active, that's probably something that you want to look at. Next, we have these next four are really about your core resource types and helping you understand which of your S3 buckets, which your EC2 instances, your AMIs, and your users are most problematic. And then we have a similar view in terms of accounts, which accounts are most problematic. And we look at this in two ways, both in terms of finding severity and also in terms of resource types. Now, all these are clickable. So there's two primary workflows that I like to think about, a compliance workflow and then the security workflow. From the compliance perspective, and these workflows are actually quite similar, but I'll show you both of them. So from a compliance perspective, typically what I'll be doing is looking at these standards widgets, and if there's something that looks problematic in here, I'll click down into it. This brings me to this rules page. So each of those 43 different rules from the CIS AWS Foundation's benchmark is represented here. And you can see there's a summary card for each that helps you understand is that rule compliant or non-compliant, and then what's the specific status of the accounts under that rule. So I can click down into one of these. You can see here for this rule, I'll drill down into that. There are two active findings where there were failures, and one active finding that passed. So there are two accounts that are out of compliance, one that are in compliance. And from here, I can drill down further. So if I click on one of those findings, it will bring me to this finding details panel. This has a number of additional information that help me understand, okay, is this something that I need to go and now remediate? I'll just drill down into here and you can see some of those additional information. Now, if I do decide that I want to take an action on these, there are a number of actions available. We have one default action, which is simply archiving those findings. And then we have 3 custom actions built into the demo here. So this first custom action means that we'll archive that finding both in Security Hub and Guard Duty. This isn't a Guard Duty finding, so not relevant. We have a custom action around terminating the instance, and then a custom action around saying to SNS. So perhaps I built out an SNS topic that people can subscribe to, such as sending out an email to a certain email group, that these are findings that need to be remediated. Okay, so going back to the dashboard page, another workflow is that more security-oriented workflow. So I might drill down into one of these Insight dashboard widgets, such as, let's say, top AMIs by finding severity. Here you can see that there's a list of all of my AMIs that have a finding associated with them. And we have a number of data slicers here on the right-hand side that would allow me to further drill down into these findings. So as an example, if I only wanted to see the ones that are associated with critical, that recuts the data. So it's showing me the AMIs that only have a critical severity label associated with it. And from there, it's really the same process. I can drill down, and here I can see all the findings associated with that AMI that are critical. You can see that these are all coming from Qualys. And if I wanted to, I could once again select one or select all of them and take an action. In this case, perhaps I want to terminate the instances associated with these findings. If I did terminate the instance, it sends those findings to CloudWatch events, and that terminate instance action is now performed. All right. So one of the other workflows I wanted to show quickly is how do you create your own insight? So you could create your own insight by simply adding a filter to an existing insight, or you could start from scratch from this findings view. In this findings view, let's see here. I'll start by looking for a particular vendor, let's say CrowdStrike. So I'm going to say product ARN contains CrowdStrike. And let's say I only want to see high severity findings from CrowdStrike. So I'll say severity, add another filter here, severity label equals high. So this shows me all of the high findings from CrowdStrike. Now, the last step to create an insight is you need to add a group by filter, an aggregation access. So I'll say group by, let's go by resource ID. So now what this is showing me is the resources that are been flagged by CrowdStrike and that have a severity label as high. And so from here, I can create an insight. Now, if I go into, I have all of my insights, both my pre-configured ones and the ones that I've created, stored here in this insights node. And you can see here, that's the one I just created, the high severity alerts from CrowdStrike by resource ID. All right, lastly, just to show you how this was all set up. So I was mentioning the multi-account roll-up capabilities. In this demo, we had 3 accounts that were part of the master member hierarchy. So these 3 accounts, I can see all the findings from this account, from my account, which is the master, plus any findings natively generated by my account. It's quite easy to add accounts. You can enter them one by one, or you can upload a CSV. You saw 3 custom actions here in this demo. It's very easy to create additional custom action. You simply enter a name, a description, a custom action ID. And then you would also go into the CloudWatch event console and create the corresponding rule that looks for the custom action ID as you labeled it here. Next, providers. So you saw that in this demo, I had a number of providers loaded into it. You saw folks like CrowdStrike and Qualys. We have a providers page here that lists out all of the providers. Most of these providers have both a purchase and a configure link. The purchase link takes you to the marketplace, so if you don't already have this provider and you're interested, we make that easy. The configure link is really the directions or the instructions needed to configure the integration. As you saw earlier in the slides, that's usually something like a CloudFormation template, but some vendors have made it even simpler with just a couple of clicks. You'll also want to, you can see that all of these different providers or partners have already been subscribed. Once you have properly configured the integration, you'll hit subscribe. That will put in place any resource policy permissions that are needed to actually accept the findings from that customer or from that partner. Next, we have the usage page. This is simply telling you in terms of this billing period, how many findings and how many standards have you ingested or enabled. As we get closer to GA, and once we have further validated costs, we'll turn on costs for this so that you actually have a monthly cost estimate of what it would cost to run Security Hub. And then lastly, this is where we're storing those service permissions and also any resource policies that you put in place when you subscribe to a partner. And if you decide that you don't want to use Security Hub anymore, you can use the disable there. All right. So with that, let me go back to the last few slides here, and then we can take questions. So the key takeaways, hopefully, that you got from both the demo and the slides that I went over earlier is that Security Hub is designed to help you understand and manage your overall AWS security and compliance state or posture. And we do this really in 3 ways. 1, we're helping you evaluate your compliance against best practices, the first module being the CIS AWS Foundations benchmark, and then we'll add additional modules over time. We are collecting findings from all your different accounts. We're normalizing those for you so you don't have to deal with that pain. And then we're using those insight capabilities to help you identify which resources and ultimately which findings are most important that you can then take action on via those custom actions that you can set up. If this looks interesting, try the preview. Like I said, just a couple clicks to get started. If you want to learn more, we have a website that's listed here. It lists out all of our partners and also frequently asked questions. Thank you very much for listening and look forward to hearing your questions.